Hi, haven't met you. I'm Hi.
Inga.
Nice to meet you. Did you bring her?
Yep. Oh, Eric.
Oh,
yeah,
good, good.
Well together.
Oh, good. Nice to meet you.
Well, I guess we should get started with this since you have to go.
No rush. I'm gonna have to.
But because we have so many new faces today, I'll give some context. So basically, I was invited by CentralTrak to produce an exhibition as part of a curatorial residency about 2 years ago. 2 years leading up to it, we were trying to fundraise it after multiple iterations of changing the proposal and budget to try and work within the framework that we had here in CentralTrak, which was almost nothing in terms of budget. It just wasn't going to work. And at some point, a colleague and friend of mine looked at me and said, "What is that saying about your value and the value of CentralTrak in terms of the university, that you're getting such little support for this project?" And so at that moment, it kind of made me sort of shift my train of thinking, and really realize that this was a bigger conversation and a bigger issue that's happening in the art world in general, this lack of funding and this lack of value for culture and the arts. And so I called Hyde and I told him, I asked him, what do you think about just canceling the show altogether and leaving the gallery totally empty, because there's just not money to do a project like this, and I think it could be a bigger statement in terms of having a conversation and discussion.
Leaving it empty as a piece. Yeah. And to put things in context for people who weren't here for the last few series, the budget that Leslie was pitching was between $6,000 and $8,000. Our annual budget for all of our programming this year, we got this huge boost, and it's $11,000
for the entire year.
So this one exhibition was going to cost us about 75% of our budget. So that's, but Leslie does bring up important points about how, as artists, we all make things happen because we want to see it happen. And our funders don't always come across with appropriate funds. And we've sort of, it's a, what do you call it, mutually exploitive, no, not right. It is, maybe mutually, it's not codependent, it's sort of like an S&M relationship, really. Because we've talked ourselves, or we've made it so available so that we're exploited. We're exploiting ourselves, we're willingly exploiting ourselves because we want to make things happen, and there aren't the funding. Meanwhile, Leslie got here the week of the art fair to much pomp and circumstance and lots of conspicuous wealth, but not necessarily aimed to benefit any artist. It was, hey Dallas, look at us! Yeah. Aren't we grand?
It was really obvious, actually. It was really, really, really obvious. And so then I realized too, where is the discrepancy? So clearly it's like there's not a trickle down. But I also realized, and specifically during the art fair week, that these are things that people are talking about and clearly frustrated with, but there hasn't been a place to really have a bitch session and let it all out and make it really real and transparent. And so that's where we started writing on the wall. So the first 2 weeks, we wrote the problems that are contributing to perpetuating the cycle of not supporting the arts and culture in Dallas specifically, but then looking at it as a bigger picture within the United States. Lots of funding has been cut, the NEA has been cut, arts and culture has been cut, the NEA doesn't support individual artists anymore. So we started writing on the walls and wrote some problems and really kind of just laid it out on the table, and it was like a good old-fashioned bitch session is really what it was. And it was kind of great to have happen because it was just like, this is a safe space, we can get it all out on the table, find common ground, find the mutual issues, and then...
And since this is a series, it's not just let's all complain about how effed we all are, but we can actually move towards some solutions. And last week was really great. We started talking about establishing a barter network for artists.
Yeah. Well, and then segueing into last week, so on this wall, I decided that in the middle, we needed some way to go from problems to solutions in a very real way. So then we sat and we made a list of the things we want from an arts ecosystem. So it was really clear what we could get, and it was really clear what we wanted and how to get to it, which leads into the past 2 weeks, this week and last week, which is outlining solutions of what can really happen. So a barter system, for instance, is actually something that's really doable. Someone threw out the idea of making an airline miles bank, which would be huge and really helpful for artists and institutions to kind of like to use invite to in some capacity. I know that I got myself here. You know, that would have been really helpful to be able to have, or to be able to have access to, for instance. So it's kind of where we are now. And then leading into that, Hyde and I have been talking this week and sort of realizing that I can't just walk away from this. Like, I have to be here. I have to have a presence. So I think one thing I want to talk about today and open it up for discussion is, how do we continue this conversation so it doesn't fizzle out? Like, we've got these really real things on the wall here that we've been talking about in terms of like a barter system, a co-op, etc. Things that can actually gain infrastructure and structure in Dallas. But how do we make sure that it doesn't happen? And how can I help facilitate that? So we talked about my coming back every 6 months for like a month or two to kind of pick up the conversation, see where we left off and continue on. And then ways in which we can sort of facilitate that conversation in the interim. So like, would a blog help? Like, what are some real goals that we want to have happen between now and the next time I come back?
And I'm really excited about Leslie's tenacity with this project and this proposal because, CentralTrak is an artist-in-residence and functions to bring artists here for a time so they can work and meet people in the community. But Leslie's talking about extending this so that she will return and she will have a relationship to Dallas. And I think that makes CentralTrak feel like a success to me, is that we're building a network. It's not just one-offs.
Yeah, I feel so invested. Mm-hmm. And even if you read the articles over the course of the 5 or 6 weeks that I've been writing them, there's 2 more that will come out whenever I write them. But it's you can see my language changing from like, this was my experience, this is the show that I wanted, from I to now the narrative is really about we discussed this and this is what we did and we talked about in the session and what we have seen happen. So the narrative has changed there too, which I think is really incredible, as well as like the sentiment of these sessions has changed from going to being something like that was really sort of frustrated and heavy-handed from the beginning into things that are actually like real solutions, so that there is kind of, it's a little bit more optimistic than it was when we first started, I think.
Yeah. Which
is great to see, and that's a great momentum to start making things happen, I think. So I want to open it up to everyone here. We talked about some when we were here last week. And I sent out a list to all of our participants last week about just basically this list. So the idea was to come here this week and talk about moving forward and what can we do. So I want to really focus today on goals, like meet some goals. What is realistic to make happen? If we want to do a co-op, what do we want to see happen in like 6 months when I come back, that there's like a real something. So let's open it up for conversation. I know, Hyde, you've probably been thinking about this a little bit.
Something we brought up too is that there's a co-op developing right now by the Bowden family has bought a building in the Cedars, but it's not exactly functioning as a co-op. It's more like cheap, more affordable studios for artists, which is a great asset, but it's not going to be, but it's not going to necessarily be run by artists. They have a staff and they're calling the shots, and so it's a different thing that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you talked to the people at the Dallas Art Fair?
No, I haven't.
Have they been approached?
No, they haven't been approached. I don't even know how to get access.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like, what would your sort of pitch be?
I was at the LA Art Fair this year, and there was a really great section. They had more of a ground level section of galleries and artists, and they had actually the school in Pasadena that Allison went to. The school had a booth in the art fair, and they were selling student art, and it really made a show.
Yeah,
and a lot of, actually, there's a few art fairs like that. I shouldn't say a lot, but a lot of really big art fairs do that. And there's a lot of art fairs that are just focused on emerging talent and artists. So they will bounce around to different locations. But yeah, I wonder why the Dallas Art Fair doesn't do that. I guess it's not commercially viable for them. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking, is that it's limited space. There's talk that they'll move into a new space. But yeah, I think it would give the fair a lot more depth if there was room for publications, nonprofits, more local engagement.
Wait, you don't think a big candy table is
pompous, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I won't go to it. Like, I just find it sickening.
What did you call it? It's pretty.
Freeze.
No, you said it's pretty
Pompous.
Yeah, and I've gone a few times when I was invited because I was on a residency, and I found it was really frighteningly sickening. I mean, even worse than Dallas, just to put it into context. So we had an after party for Marina Abramovich in what looked like diehards, old school buildings where it was like a empty skyscraper full of Russian oligarchs and truffles and cocktails, and everything was just people like under little spotlight chefs chopping up little bits of meat. And I mean, it was really bizarre. And no eye contact. Nobody wanted to speak to you because you weren't anybody.
That's actually what the Joel party was, and there was a moment where Kai and I talked to one of the bartenders, and you can see he let his guard down. Because we asked him, how are you? Because we were clearly the only people that had.
If you didn't get to go to the eyeball, they dressed the bartenders in like these half wigs with like my makeup, and you could tell it was really humiliating for them. And also it was, well, we're getting off the subject, but I was going to say, I thought a big theme of the party was using humans as decoration.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Super weird.
But sorry, I was digressing. What I wanted to say was that there's been a backlash to freeze in London, and so there's an off freeze, or another fair that goes on at the same time, and that's something you can think of doing in Dallas. Is that at the same time as the Dallas Art Fair, that there's something else going on.
Shadow Fair.
A shadow fair.
We
and
had
that's
talked
not
about.
Our boss does it. I mean, you can't afford these spaces, galleries. There was.
Exactly. So you just create your own. You don't beg them to be part of it, because actually your idea might be better anyway.
You had a fundraising party thing last week, like an art prom or an art something.
Oh yeah.
That could totally happen. So yeah, it could totally happen around the Dallas Art Fair as well.
It'd just be great, whatever we did, to bring the focus back to artists instead of the art market, which is a little disenfranchising.
The funny thing about the art fair is you're speaking about real space that is limited, you're speaking about costs, you're speaking about sponsorships, all these things that are commoditized and very highly packaged. And I don't think necessarily paralleling it is a great idea so much as should the media attention, which it is locally, be turned on events such as the art fair. You ride that coattail of the media as criticism of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, I worry about the idea of costs when you can actually not necessarily produce material so much as ephemera that gains attention. Because even like Art Basel in Miami, friends from LA couldn't afford the main galleries, so they joined the outside galleries. No one can afford that. Someone is always going to end up marginalized when you come down to physical space.
Sure.
And I know marginalization was a problem, and there always is. You end up with these tiered systems. So I think if you're going to think along the lines of art fair, I would just think in terms of actions critical of it, wherein artists are producing.
I think it's thinking there's those huge warehouses there's these huge warehouses in Dallas, just over the Curator-in Bridge, and I know that UTD had their students there this year, and I know Thomas Ritchie and various other people do performances there, and I just wonder if that would be offered for free for 5 days, and it could be hugely better than Dallas Art Fair.
It's a curious physical connection because it actually is connecting now. I mean, it's almost a direct. You can almost, for people's imaginations, it's helpful to map literally by that capacity. Oak Cliff, which was once historically marginalized by Dallas and is now through the bridge kind of a joint and celebration.
But
also
even-
along that, it is literally on
You
these
can even
corridor.
need a physical space. Like Randy gonna pop up in his
Yeah.
car across the street. Yeah.
Especially in the history of commoditized art, you're speaking of, what the art fair is showing is paintings that you can pick up and take away. And CentralTrak has supported just as many others, anything from sound to performance that isn't very easy a lot of times.
Right.
So you can support performance that doesn't take a reserved space.
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm trying to take some notes, and unfortunately I don't know a lot of people here today. If you could say your name before,
Oh, Tim.
the first time?
Tim.
Tim. And what was your name?
Derek?
You know, I was going to bring something up. When cable stations started having infiltrated the U.S. and they would make, I guess, like a charter with the city so that they could have that market. And what they would say again?
They made them have a local cable channel that anybody could use.
Yes, exactly. So they made it accessible to the public, and that's where I actually learned to edit video, is at Austin Community Television. And so it seems like I know the art fair is getting support from the city and other corporate sponsors, but it seems like something should click with them, and maybe we have to implant the idea.
I was thinking, shouldn't the first line of attack or whatever to be to engage the art fair rather than to start another art fair?
Right, because what you're saying, all that land is owned by Butch McGregor, or with his partnership, the warehouses, and he's really great to deal with. He's really enthusiastic about the arts, and he's very generous. But to finish out those spaces so that the well-heeled will want to visit, you'll also have to supply them with transportation there, like a shuttle, make it easy for them to get there, and you've got some expense there. So I'm kind of with you. It's like make a space within so that you,
Especially now they're looking for new space.
yeah,
They have a chance to concentrate.
right,
Yes,
right.
antagonistic, but I feel like if the well-being can't be bothered, then we don't want them.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's an
Well,
issue
that's
that
another
can't
thing,
be
is,
bothered.
they'll follow if they find it. But
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily solicited them.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's the thing. I think that there's a two-way street here that's getting a little bit lost, and I think it's because of this like really long history of frustration within the arts. I don't think it's necessarily an issue that can't be bothered. I don't think that someone has really tapped into them in the ways that they could,
Yeah.
honestly. And I think it's because of burnout. I mean, Dallas has this really, really, really visible cycle of like so many things can happen, but then people just get really tired and then it gets wiped out and things start over. Because this isn't the first time we've had conversations like this in Dallas. And so, but I think it's at a really critical moment where the city is changing, and the city is trying to create an arts district. It's trying to like really invest in culture, but doesn't know how. And the microgrants, for instance, are an example of that. So I don't think it's an issue that can't be bothered. I just think it's an issue of like how. I mean, literally, they have to fly people in to attend this fair. Like, clearly there is a bridge.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, I was going to say about like mentioning trying to get the attention of the well-heeled. It's not them in particular, but more of a diverse crowd that you would find. You don't want to throw not a party, but you don't want to throw an event that only your friends come to.
Yeah.
And that was a problem, say, in Austin. Is
Yeah.
like you go to an art show and the only people there were other artists, and they're gathered around a keg, and there's not a scene. You know, it's you know.
I mean, the funny thing is, out of curiosity, we speak of institutions, like the art fair as an institution. We're speaking of CentralTrak as an institution, but these are only made up of individuals, from artists to collectors to so on and so forth. So if you're looking for a way to connect necessarily, to a degree, wouldn't it be through curators and gallerists? Because a gallerist, I mean, when there's an art market crash, they'll close their shop, but they keep their Rolodex. It's the network that matters. I know plenty of artists now, gallerists in LA, made a lot of money during the crash, but that's because they didn't have to pay rent.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't afford that space, but they kept selling art. So, I mean, as a sympathetic and also connected person, approaching galleries without necessarily contradicting their contract with the art fair.
Well, I think that actually one step that is missing that we really need to kind of solidify between now and whenever, which I'm going to place a time frame of 6 months. I think another thing that really needs to happen is that there needs to be better communication between CentralTrak and UTD. And I think that could go really far too, because UTD is really disconnected and doesn't come to CentralTrak. And I think that there are really creative ways that we as residents can to kind of show, like, look, we're here, we're doing things.
Yeah.
And then I think that could then lead into further funding. I think that could lead into more connections within the city as well. So I don't think that one is.
Because, I mean, UTG is, what is her name? I mean, she's wonderful. Barbara, the library, oh God, the library at UTD and so on and so forth. She's a big supporter of the arts. She brought up the fellow who was the head of the EMA to head their art department. So why not head back downtown towards this area?
Because I think you've got great connections with galleries already, actually.
I forgot the name of the library at UTD and
Yeah, I think you've got great connections with galleries, but I think that the university needs to be tapped as a resource.
I was going to bring up the subject of class too, because I feel like that's really where there's this divide. And last week we kind of hit on it about how even when artists and collectors are in a space together, they don't interact very well. And I think there's such a divide between people making art and people consuming art. And I guess in general, like Dallas has some real issues with diversification.
I haven't seen it as palpable anywhere that I've ever been than I've been in Dallas. Like, it's
Really?
been really, really obvious here. Yeah.
And Leslie lives in Mexico
And I
City.
live in Mexico City where there's a very obvious hierarchy of class. Basically. So yeah, how do we do that within the next 6 months? Like, how can we continue? How can we breach that as well? I guess.
It seems like to me there are people that do a good job of going in between them. You know, like someone like Heidi, I feel like. There are artists in the city that can kind of go back and forth. They have relationships with some of the collectors, but also they have relationships with the artists. I wonder if that would be a way, like identifying those people.
I don't think we can take it.
More to kind of be like, I don't know.
Careful.
No, I totally agree. No, I totally agree. And we were talking about this last week. Like, it's a really exhausting thing to do to constantly navigate between these two things: being an artist, being a director, being a fundraiser, going to the schmoozing things. It's really difficult. So we do need more hides.
Or maybe what we need is more advocates. And that's the thing too, you know, like
more hide advocates.
well, like 10, 15 years ago, I wasn't curating shows because I didn't feel empowered to do it. I was very interested in it. I had a lot of ideas, but I was just like, well, I'm not an art historian, I'm not a curator. But you can do it, and you can advocate for artists as well. I mean, the passion that keeps me at this job is like seeing the need for arts advocacy.
The gallery owners are the perfect people to bridge that gap. I mean, they're dealing with the artists and they're dealing with the patrons.
That's what I was thinking in connection with what you're saying. So maybe someone like Nancy Whitenat,
Right.
who actually loves to have exhibitions that don't necessarily bring in money. I remember she did somebody that got their MFA from SMU, made this huge cave. Do you remember that? I don't remember her name, but Nancy was so excited to do that, but she can't do that on a regular basis because she's a commercial gallery.
Yeah.
But that association with that kind of work, I know for a fact, is interested. There's got to be other gallerists that have interest in sound and video and.
Yeah. Now, in terms of what they're doing at the art fair, so I know they don't want to give up a square foot of what they do, because also that would be in conflict with what they're trying to do for their artist.
Right.
But
They're building a relationship with them to have that dialogue.
Yeah.
To go that next step.
yeah.
And there's also the institutional presence that could help with that as well. Like if the arts community was more tapped in with the DMA, for instance, and the DMA does have some experimental programming, and like their experimental programs on space, which was this, we went last night, which was this like 4-month-long program that they did when they just experimented with space, but that could be something to tap into as well, which could then bring in,
You know, when I first took this job, Joan Davidow, who ran the Dallas Contemporary previously, took me aside, was sort of like trying to give me a few like little bits of advice, which was really helpful. And she said, you're in competition with commercial galleries. And I was like, oh, no, we don't sell anything here. And she's like, no, for an audience, to get people in here. Like you're always going to be competing. And
Are you talking about in terms of time? Like,
yeah.
Commitment?
Yeah,
Like,
time.
I just saw an art show, so I can't see another one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
that's another narrative that needs to be changed. It's not competition, it's ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm really relieved that we don't enter into commercialism here. Is that we can like show edgier things, and we can really sort of go for it in those terms. That, you know, like you were saying, like Nancy Whiteman really takes a chance, or she not even taking a chance. She knows like the end game for this project is that we're going to have a fabulous show, but I'm not going to be able to pay the rent.
Well, I think something that's really unique to Dallas and Fort Worth is that we have, is that we have so many MFA programs, and we have 7 or maybe 8.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And so, you know, UTD is doing something great, even though the funding isn't maybe quite there, but at least it has a presence here. And none of the other schools are doing that. I just wonder if there could be something with the universities where they, you know, come together. I mean, I remember Austin has 1. San Antonio has 1 MFA program. I don't know how many, but like 7.
Houston has 1.
Houston has 1, and so that's something I think Dallas is sort of unique with.
Does Rice have an MFA program?
I think Rice does have an MFA program.
Then 2.
Right.
But Austin has 2, St. Anne's has an MFA program.
Oh.
It's not very big, but it's crazy expensive.
Right. But places like this are really special. And,
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why
That's true.
other schools don't get. And UTSA, I remember they have a space, satellite space, once they did, where they were showing artists, and you know,
It was run by students.
it was when we were forced into the garden. Yeah. But we did, and we took it on because we really cared about it. And so I just wonder why more schools don't engage with that. But I also think that, you know, because I talk with Hyde a lot about proposals and opportunities that come up, and he says no to some of them because they're not funded. And I think that's really smart. I just wonder if we could all just sort of stick together on this, like, okay, you're not going to give us any incentive or any help with the funding.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the poster back here for Wage, which is like a sort of a unionizing effort by artists to be compensated for their time and their projects. Do all of you know about it?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think there's a website on the, or web domain address on the bottom of the poster, but check it out, because it was really, actually, really useful information. I felt bolstered by other people doing this, and I felt like, oh, now I have some framework to ask for how artists should be compensated.
And Wage was a huge resource for me when kind of thinking in terms of closing the gallery space and canceling, or not closing, but canceling the project, because there's also a resource bank with lots and lots and lots of articles written about these issues over history. It's really great. But getting back to, tapping into MFA programs, I totally agree. I think one of the best things that I was able to see happen at UT Austin, for instance, was whenever there was an artist visiting, everyone kind of got together, and there was like a happy hour get-together thing, but that artist was also expected to do studio visits with students. And there was a full day planned out just for the artists to be there, and they were compensated for it. And then at the end of the day, there was a lecture. So it was a really long day, but they were compensated for the studio visits and then separately for the lecture as well. And then that was promoted cross-departmentally and across universities. Now granted, Dallas has a ton of universities, so that might get a little difficult to navigate that, but it's a possibility, you know?
But it's also great because, say you've got a visiting artist, if they're looking for some help with their travel funding, they've got choice of like 5 or 6, tours they can do.
Yeah.
And I think part of it too is like, I had a meeting with our dean yesterday, and he's not down here and he's not in the thick of it, but he's open to learning about it. And my job is to tell him about these things. Like people with regular jobs don't necessarily understand how other people might be piecing it together so that they can make projects happen.
I'm new to all this, so I don't know much about it, but have you applied for grants, or have you explored grants in that route?
It's complex.
CentralTrak is within the university system, and so the university system has to apply for CentralTrak. So there's this bureaucratic shuffle that happens.
Yeah, so we can, it goes through them, and there are months and delays. And there's also a big effort to educate the university's development department, which we're working with for grants, to understand what we do and to make appropriate proposals. And it's really exhausting. We don't have a dedicated grant writer, and it's a specific talent.
That's tough if you don't have, oh my goodness.
Right. And, I think we're good there.
I was thinking another way to get residencies more connected to
But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep trying.
a residency like this, to find funding for this residency, and also foster a relationship with the university would be to take on something that there is, for example, the core in Houston, where you're offered, the residents are expected, or at least offered, to teach, which means that takes place for stipend. So here, for example, there's free accommodation with no funding for the residents, and if you're an international student, like, artists like Reinhard or we're not legally allowed to work, so we've got no money to survive, and we can't take like a coffee job or anything. So, but if we were offered teaching, I know Reinhard, Christopher, myself, artists here, and curators, so I was first starting the artists and then curators, and then the university would like every 3 or 4 or 5 months have a new artist or a new curator coming from a different part of this country or world, and the students would like have so much fun with that. And then we also, I know the other artists here, Christopher Reinhold and I would love to have done that, and I know the curators, Sally wanted to do that.
I don't have as much teaching experience as I want. So I would love
Yeah,
to.
and I'll tell you, that's a great idea, except it complicates things in another way, and that none of you would probably be here if you have to go through like a faculty committee. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it would. What's great about CentralTrak being away from the university is that we can operate to an extent independently. The more attached we are to them, the more bureaucracy and like add in 6 months, a year, 2 years to any project you want to do. Like right now we're kind of lean and mean and we can go for things. Go ahead, Sylvia.
So this is a hot subject, but related to all of it. So maybe one organization we here at CentralTrak need is what I call an extra, in that it's not UTD, but it is what you call it, a friends or your support group or whatever, because that then can function as a source to get money and people and innovation. So if that group can be strong enough, you can get enough money, or you can even have people who volunteer time for grants, etc. Then a lot of this, which sounds terrific, we would be able to do. So that's a long-time dream, I know that I have, which is to build up outside support, which also makes them less vulnerable to the university.
And could an independent body, like the Friends of CentralTrak, could they supply foreign artists with payment or employment?
Whatever that organization chooses to do legally, of course. So the best way, of course, is a corporation is a nonprofit, which has some latitude, and then they can set, of course, with you there, some paths to go and how to do it. Certainly, they could have a fund for the residents, resident stipends or something.
Right.
But CentralTrak doesn't even have to, this is a great example of teaching and using the university that way, but it doesn't have to be just UTD. There's the Meadows, or there's SMU, and there's UT Arlington, and there's, it can be broken up into a series of like short-term talks depending, or visiting lecture series depending on what the interest of the artist is. It doesn't have to be in the art department either. I know lots of artists that started as mathematicians and science people. You know, like there's actually other ways to kind of think creatively about it rather than just one source.
I wonder, because of UTD's connections, the idea of supporting artists coming to visit, further with temporary employment, the idea of internships. Because internships are now paid very handsomely in some places. They're not, you know, because they are getting something from that person. And I wonder if, because UTD obviously carries a lot of internships from that, you know, the model of like your MBA business education to other kind of things, there's a way to connect to that base of pay for artists coming into town. Especially considering they come in for like 3-month periods.
I want to go back to what she was saying. Shirley? Sylvia, sorry. Basically, I know that's a huge endeavor that you're talking about, huge, like getting a board and all of that kind of stuff, but if those people were patrons of the arts, then that is the way to kind of start also having them be connected to CentralTrak, other artists, and things like that. So that seems like a really long-term goal.
Yeah.
Really smart.
That also ties into the co-op that we were talking about last week that someone was interested in. You know, that co-op can then develop to become something else.
Yeah.
Because we were to me the issue of like, or not the issue, but the one solution that came up last week was building a co-op that's like for supporters of the arts as well as artists that artists can buy into for like maybe, I don't know, some sort of due like $20 a year or something, and then have access to all this stuff, and then people that want to have like a membership can pay a little bit more to this membership to get information or professional services or various levels. But it could turn into something bigger that is like operating with a board.
And even though I agree with you that a really solid, big time one will take time, there's no prohibition about a smaller one who just starts. Right. So maybe what we have to do is create a starting group.
Right.
Just goes ahead and does it.
That makes sense, yeah.
Get it started.
So thank you for bringing that up, Erin, about like other institutions contributing to this effort. Because, you know, with this being critical of our funding situation, it's a little bit scary. You know, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds, because CentralTrak is incredible, and just like I think like what a crazy thing that this happened and continues to happen. Please God, let it keep going, because it's a really valuable resource for artists. But it only gets you so far, and it is sort of like, you know, like raising a barn. Well, like, you know, come on neighbor, help us get this going. It's like you're not responsible for building a barn on our land. But SMU, it'd be great if you brought over some nails, you know? TCU, bring over some 2x4s. It's like, come on, like, because this really does benefit. We work with every institution, reachable.
I'm wondering, is it that, you know, we've talked about it could be a really long-term thing, or we could just start it, you know, today kind of thing. I just wonder, am I being naive, but I think, you know, if one were to send a series of emails to, you know, 6 museums or 4 museums in Dallas and Fort Worth, and to 6 different departments in universities like SMU, TG, and just said, you know, we're going to start this board or this group that's going to meet every 2 months here and talk about, you know, what it's like to be an artist in this city, what it's like to be a visiting artist in the city, what it's like to interact with the community, and we just need you for almost like a potluck, but you know, 2 hours, we'll supply the food and we just bring the beer, and we have these discussions, and then we share basically address books of it. Somebody goes, oh, I need to put you in touch with blah blah, and oh yeah, right, and if we have somebody from every university who, you know, it could be someone like Noah, or it could be a dean, and they just come in and they start being like, yeah, if you've got this artist coming in 3 months' time, they would be great as a teacher on this course, or something different, like, oh, there's this artist group in this high school that we'd like to help. You know, it could be on every level.
And if, you know, and I'm sure other institutions will be like, why are we giving our money to CentralTrak? But if they understood that what they're doing is this money is directly going to an artist or a curator or a writer to support them.
But it doesn't even have to be money initially. Like Kate is just saying, like, it can be address books. It can be like, oh, you're here for this. Let me get you in touch with this person as a resource, and then you start to see the benefits of it long term, and then it becomes like, why don't I just write you a check?
Yeah,
You know?
I think that we don't want to make it focus about Dallas, but just to say quickly, I mean, I think that I've done that in 3.5, 4 months. I've run around and networked, and you've done that, run around and networked. But for CentralTrak to do that, you know, I can come and bring all my knowledge and all my contacts that I've made. But it would also be good for CentralTrak that they're doing, you know, it's coming to them directly.
And I think that's going to be a really mobilizing factor in the city of Dallas and the arts ecosystem as well. That CentralTrak is going to be this really great model for a place to go for resources and information, and it can really, really, really grow. And it will also fill that gap of that trickle down, because there's this, you know, you've got this sort of support for national and international artists on a collector level, but you don't have it for the local. And then CentralTrak could really become the hub for that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
which would be great to see. And I think it could also grow into something that really gains momentum and gains visibility with the city, which is very clearly trying to do something to support the arts in some way in the cultural sector.
Right.
Well, just to move it on a bit, so we have almost 4 ideas for some kind of coalition kinds of activities. So that's something that we see as a group would move us forward, and we want to start it now, okay? So which one do we want to do first, or do we want to, because they have 2 people who work here, maybe 3 now, and let me tell you guys, they don't have a whole hell of a lot of time.
Right.
So one good thing would just be a quick find money for this one person here, maybe even a resident, okay, to spearhead this, because who's going to have the time? We don't have it's on the committee. It's just an idea that we have to think how we're going to get it off and just do it.
Well, part of that too, Sylvia, so Heidi and I have been talking, I'm coming back. Yeah, so it's going to be like every 6 months or so. We haven't really worked out the details, but like to make sure that that we actually meet the goals that we're talking about here, and like pick up the conversation again, and then move it to the next phase. So that's something there. Is like if someone can be chosen, or someone, you know, or whatever these ideas that are set forth happen. Like I'm still in touch, kind of moving it along to see where it goes. You know.
yeah. Like we need a point person.
Yeah. Or just like to pick up the momentum again. So then it really becomes like, how do we keep the momentum going while I'm gone? So.
And also, how are you compensated for these efforts? Because this could become a really big job. And again, like I hate to harp on that, but like I know from experience, I know from my own, like what you prioritize, what you're able to prioritize.
Yeah.
Because we're not all independently wealthy.
So it's
Just Daryl.
Just Daryl. And he's awake.
So I also think, I guess in the sense the way your curatorial practice works, it overlaps with your trajectory in general. But I'd also say what I'm noticing that you're doing is maybe not what you should have to be doing as a resident here. So you are taking on like the missing job that should be existing in CentralTrak but isn't there, and you're taking that. Because I see you almost as part of the CentralTrak
Cheerleader?
group. Yeah. Like organising the Talk to Fair Park. I mean, usually an artist in resident or a curator in resident wouldn't be doing that. But you're taking on the fact that there's not enough people working in CentralTrak.
Yeah. Actually, you're both really great at engagement as artists. Like we have some artists that don't, and they really miss out on it. And I think a big part of that is like you creating your own reality and your own opportunities.
Yeah. And I think we both are very much about creating our own opportunities.
And you're socially skilled, which is good, you know.
What a good day.
Is there a way to send out a call or something, or just, I don't know how to term it, for that person, and they would be a resident, so they could live here and be that?
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
what I think, because that's like what you're doing in a way.
Yeah.
Well, let's try to define what that is and see, and maybe we can.
It's like being a consultant. It's almost
Yeah.
like you're CentralTrak's consultant running here, as well as being.
So this This series has been so that we can get Leslie a permanent job. We can timeshare her apartment in Mexico City.
I already have it.
Okay.
I was actually, so I'm in the process of building a website, which was also one of my goals personally in CentralTrak, and I was really thinking of embedding a blog in there that was just devoted to like picking up this conversation every now and again. And I passed this along to Hyde, where I saw some like a, what was it called? The blog that I sent you on Daily Survey.
Oh.
It was like kind of like a romance love styles blog, but it was about the art world. So anyone could like send in a question to this writer, Bean, and is her name or his her name. They could send a question to her and she could answer it. So it was kind of one of those things where it was like, yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, it's Dear Abby, but you know, and then that could be a way to kind of feed the conversation to make sure so when it hits a stall or a standpoint to answer.
And it was all about art world stuff.
Yeah, it's all art world stuff.
It's interesting, while you were away for 6 months, it'd be great if you had a column that anybody in Dallas in the arts and culture, whether it's an artist or a gallerist or a curator or a community member, can write. And you're like, do you call it in this country agony art, or you don't have that phrase? In England, it's a columnist that you write them about your romantic problems, and then they write back. And you know, like my husband's cheated on me, and what do I do? And then you write back. But this would be artists, curators, gallerists writing, and you would write a response with Dallas in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of thinking along those lines too, because this is how like the sessions have sort of become modeled after like therapy sessions. And there was actually an article that I wrote in the Dallas Observer where I related to the art world as like a relationship. And so yeah, I was thinking of you know modeling this blog in that way, so that it's kind of like a Dear Abby thing, and then you know.
I really like that. You know, I think about what happened at the art. I think it was during the art fair in Miami a couple years ago, where the local artist broke an highway to protest like the local art scene. Unfortunately, his work was awful. Of course, he's not going to be shown anywhere. But please don't break, you know, somebody else's work.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, what was interesting was how much attention that got in the news and the media, and I just wish that it had been a more. I wish that he had done the protest in a different way.
Productive way?
In a very, and like, instead of, you know, he kind of like took a step back instead of took a step forward, unfortunately. Because not only was he uneducated, but he was an awful artist. So I wonder if there's something more like a national presence that could happen here, not maybe as a protest, but I don't know if it's so extreme.
Hey Tim, switch seats with me. I don't want Leslie to have to sit by herself up here. I'm gonna have to run. But thank you all for doing this, and I'm gonna expect it all to be sorted out while in my absence.
Bye, Hyde.
All right, Sean, come back.
So Hyde will be in charge of everything. By default, we're leaving.
I'll put in 2 cents on activism and organizing. One thing is there are questions of like, get a person. I think in truth, kind of like the example given here of pedagogy of us, now me, but Hyde and Leslie taking responsible to broadcast to everybody is kind of a bad model. I like the seminar where we all take responsibility for ourselves. So I think that everybody in this room has the capacity to contribute. I have specific ideas based on my knowledge-based skill set, and I think everybody else does. And so it's not wants, it's capacity. It's not I want, it's what you can do. So I think it is an issue of understanding prospecting a network. It actually exists. And I don't know how you're documenting this. You said there's a list of discussion going around.
It's mainly, so the video is going up on CentralTrak's Facebook of each of the sessions. I've also been writing weekly columns for the Dallas Observer to diffuse more information about this discussion. And how else, Jesse? That's really good.
But
I want to.
Just about this.
I want to turn it into something that has a life beyond when I'm gone. So where I can facilitate it and make sure that I'm still like poking it. But that I don't necessarily have to be in charge of. Like I want to be able to, like an advice column like that, like I want ownership to happen, but I can be able to help, you know, like we all have resources, use my resources. But like someone can write into me and say, we're at this standstill, we don't know what to do. Like, oh, let me get you in touch with Erin, for
It's
instance.
really amazing because also people would be reading it from outside of this group. People who don't know yet this conversation's even happening. Because it would be on a legitimate platform like the Dallas Observer. People would be like, oh, what is this columnist? And like, oh, she's fielding questions from artists, communities, curators. And you could even be a kind of sub-editor, or I don't know what the right word is, but maybe occasionally, like once a month, somebody from the community, an artist, a writer, a visiting resident, a community member, a high school student, could even write an article and you would edit it to shape it up. And it would be, so once a month, somebody actually from the community who, like somebody like, I'm not sure, probably most of us in this room haven't ever had, well maybe I should talk for anyone else, I haven't had an article ever in a newspaper, and I doubt I ever will. But you know, or a high school student, or a church member, or I don't know, somebody. But then suddenly they would have this voice, and if it was relevant to the discussion, it would have this. The other thing I was going to say is that we should be sitting in a circle.
Yeah, I always agree.
Because when you meet, we don't know who each other are.
We totally should be sitting. It's funny how this format happened really organically. Like people, the first week was grab your own chair and get your own chair and sit down when you come in, and that's how this happened. and I think it was also because we were looking at the wall. So yeah, and it's funny to see how people are somewhat uncomfortable with the circle format unless you like put them in it. You know, it's been really
Who began just
it's been really interesting to see that.
Thanks,
Yes,
But I'm gonna have to leave, and I hate to, but I just came back from Tucson, and you want to know my life story, but I want to talk a little bit about community organizing and advocacy and what we are doing here. We have a great big wide range of things. I don't think any one thing will be our final everything, okay? And so I've said it before, we need to start one or two things to give vitality into the group, and the group then self-determined will become community organizers in some way. If we set out that older model about developing community organizing, we might take too long and our opportunity might be gone. So again, I'm pushing the idea, whatever this major first, second, or third thing is, that we stop talking, and the circle is nice, but we get and do something, okay? There's a lot of things we threw out. Some are simple, some people can just pick up on their own. I mean, I love the Dear Abby column. I mean, I would read it every week and write bad things back. I mean, it would just be fun. I'm also a money person, and I hate to be, because that's so far from my past, but we need to get money. Okay, we need to start doing that, and we do it in little parts. We don't have to have the whole big picture. We don't have to get it all done in the month. But if we don't go beyond what we're doing here, and nothing comes out, then we will be just where we were before, and it's getting later and later.
And that's my biggest fear, is we mobilize so much momentum, and we've shifted beyond the antagonism and frustration of the first couple of weeks into something that's really positive, which is really good to move off of, you know.
And there are 3 or 4 things that whatever you all talk about that you resounded to, they can be done fairly quickly. And part of the group here, whoever has some time, might just say, hey, take it up for the week or 2. So, but it really seems to me we're into movement, and that's, as well as the final idea, we need to get the start done. A lot of it will be junk. I mean, when we really start doing things, we'll see, oh my God, I mean, who's going to really do that? But you'll find out from it, but it's,
It'll sort out. And I think that's the strength of people taking and understanding the network, and understanding not putting all our eggs in one basket, one institutional basket of a hierarchy dependent on one person. Is there's a weakness inherent there in the capacity that should that person drop off, should that institution not be funded, it will fall apart. So I think I don't think we're too worried about a lot of ideas. I think we're worried about, because those sort out in the way we do a lot of our communication. Blogging is a point person, but I think there are ways to network today that are all but free, and we're all on access, that are mobile, that should you lose someone in the network, it's fine, because that person's networked with 10 other people.
I guess,
We all need to take responsibility.
I think we all do, and I agree with you completely. I think the part I don't agree, and I'm gonna say that as I leave, so you don't really, you really can't do it, is that some of the model is very wonderful for growth over a long time, and we want that, but what we need to do is really get started now. And the model you're proposing is a wonderful one, it's the one I come from, but right now, it has to be, let's get something done. Who's gonna do it, and who's gonna take the first steps?
Yeah.
I've now been here for most of them, and I've been with CentralTrak a long time. And I'm willing to contribute funds, and we're willing to send people out, but we just have to do it.
I'd like to, for my part, I would really like to see this sort of airline as a tangible thing, this airline mile bank that Valerie you threw out last week. Would be a phenomenal step, and it would be really easy. It would take someone approaching Southwest Airlines and saying, we want this, can you make it happen for us? Because you can fly anywhere on Southwest. I could fly here from Mexico on Southwest Airlines. And that would be huge, because I got myself here, and if I didn't have that expense of getting myself here and getting myself back, that would make a huge difference, And that's one big thing I'd like to see start in the next 6 months. I want someone to go and do that, make it happen so that it's there. And it's a fantastic idea that most cities won't have.
You know what's so great about this, Leslie, is the transparency that you have, because I hear a lot, and I visited Hyde, but I had no idea the lack of funding. He touches on it a little bit, but you don't want to, I think that, he said you don't want to buy bacon at feet, and I understand, but I wish that there was more transparency everywhere, because, we see these galleries or these institutions, and I worked at Dallas Contemporary for a little bit, and I remember somebody coming up to me and saying that they saw all the employees driving Porsches and Mercedes. I'm like, those are the board members. The employees don't drive nice cars. And it's like weird misconception that a lot of people have. And so I don't know if there's a way that we could become more transparent with operations and just like lack of funding.
I think that articles have helped with that, and that was my main goal with the articles, was making these things transparent. Because Dallas does have a glittery facade, and the art world has a glittery facade in general. And the reality of the situation is, when you're getting paid $5,000 for a project, you're only breaking even. Because you've been working on that project for so long. And so that was another motivation of starting like a Dear Abby column of some sort, or a blog of some sort, was to continue this conversation here, continue that transparency as well. And I think it's really important to have that transparency in Dallas.
I think there should be a documentary or something like that. Somehow it shifted into this almost like a blog or stuff. Like maybe on Netflix, and it'd be great if all of a sudden everybody understood, what was happening, and I think that would be fantastic.
And I think Dallas is at a really critical moment for it too, honestly. I think people are really tired of this situation. And it's kind of in this moment where the history is that artists will come by their time, try to be here, live here, sustain themselves here, and can and eventually move on. And that happened in Austin for a really long time as well. And I think Dallas is in that moment that Austin was a few years ago, where it's we need to make our own system, we need to make our own ecosystem so that people stay. And that's what happened in Austin, is people, there was no institutional presence to really work from, and so we made our own. And I think that Dallas is in that moment right now too. That's what I'm seeing, that there is a lack of transparency here.
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
Can I make a suggestion that as far as how do we move forward? That I don't know how many people have been attending this in total over the 5 weeks, how many people have been here, but if we have everybody's email addresses and then we try to instigate if you're on demanding, we use everybody, somewhere in the middle, but something where people could meet, and we kind of splice up the idea of what location is. So sometimes it could be, if people are okay with this, feel comfortable, sometimes it could be at someone's house, it could be house, at home, it could be potluck. Sometimes it could be here, or FedCon. And sometimes it could be approaching like the Nasher or the DMA on a late night and saying we would like to do it in one of your spaces, and therefore we'll have all these chairs and people might join us and sit down with us, and we'll have like a sign that says what we're discussing, a couple of signs, and people can come and sit down. If it was at the Nasher like last night, the garden was wonderful, we could just bring out a big blanket and sit on the floor. I think it could be a sense of feeling like we're a community as well as bringing people. And then also when we have these events that we try to invite someone who's not, either everybody tries to invite someone who's not already in the group, or a couple of us do. We go, oh, I've heard that somebody's coming in from New York that I know who's a musician, I'll invite them to come. Or you know, your sister will be visiting, so you'll bring your sister, or somebody else will just invite an artist here that's actually based here, so that it's also kind of fresh, it's not just the group. Yeah. I don't know if this is a possible idea.
Daryl and I have been talking about we were talking about monthly brunches.
That's right. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and just like, you know, it's just like the creative community at large, and just, it's potluck, you know, and he mentioned, he put it on his status just this week as a Facebook status, and people were like, hey, we can host it here, or here's the video. And so sorry, it's nice.
I've learned at CentralTrak that if you offer mimosas, everyone shows up. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I don't think it has to be as frequently as monthly, because I know it can get hard to organize that every month. So even, and then sometimes, you know, a month isn't enough time to make those goals happen. So even like every other month or once every 3 months or something would be great if someone wants to take that on, and yeah.
I've currently got a real fire, right? I'm really excited about all this stuff. And I mean, my personal thing is I really want a space, and I want it to be cooperatively owned. And so I've been talking to people and networking and these kind of things. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, please talk to me, because I'm like, you know, it is kind of that moment, and it's in the general public and kind of in that, you know, the conscious, even if they're not present right now. So.
Well, let's do this. Let's set a date right now for like 3 months. Someone can, would you be willing, you guys are already doing it, so in 3 months, would that be enough time to host a potluck? I can Skype in. You know, I mean, maybe we can set that date now. In 3 months, there will be this potluck happening, and it'll be the beginning of the conversation, or not the beginning, but the continuing of the conversation. Sounds great.
Okay.
Sounds great. Sunday after Memorial Day.
What you got?
I thought we were talking about doing it the first Sunday.
Oh yeah. Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't. Well, that would be right.
No, it's actually like May 30th. June 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
June
Memorial Day is
first.
actually kind of
Oh,
weird.
we all have calendars. First Sunday. Yeah.
Did you up there?
But yeah.
Sunday, June 3rd.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Sunday, June is the
Yeah. It's. We talked about how
7th.
the first Sunday is.
7. Can we? What's the Sunday?
Oh, Sunday is the 7th. That's the first Sunday of June.
How can we find out
Because
about that?
Monday is 1st, so 31st.
Is that right?
So it's June. It's June.
Yes.
Then other people can be invited.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
it makes it less exclusive than email.
I
Okay,
guess
so
Shane-
can we use that email list to distribute the Facebook link?
Yeah.
Is everybody on this?
And also ask and see.
Okay, well, that'll have a little bit more details.
Yeah.
We'll agree to.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a UTA person, and I know the dean at UTA has been wanting to do something like CentralTrak, and my thought is, you know, let's just
Support it.
support CentralTrak. So I'm more interested in that. So the thing that I want to say, and that's connected to that is there a way, other than all these videotapes and all of that, is there a way to summarize all of this and what the goal is, that it's not just for CentralTrak, it's for the city, that would really help a lot of people that are not here, you know what I mean? And then I can know how to.
I'm taking it on myself to do a report that I probably won't have time to really get to and sort of think on until at least a month or two after I leave. But I know William wanted to really think about an archive of some sort of like a website or something that all this information can live on to continue further.
Articles are great. And then, you know, easy for you.
Get out there as well as people want anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you have an initial like potluck or I guess so a party, people kind of invite two people. What that's going to do is kind of give you a good starting member base.
Yeah.
For this, I guess it's like from what I can understand, it's kind of like our Rotary that everyone's kind of talking about, like a Rotary Club or some sort of community where every time you meet up, then everyone can network and stuff. So I'm wondering if you kind of start off kind of like a big party where everyone invites somebody, and then make a subscriber list at that point for everyone who kind of wants to become starters or founders for this type of thing. And then they'll be kind of obligated that they have to kind of attend meetings and stuff. And then at those meetings, maybe propose events for everyone to kind of get behind, or I would also propose like a gallery, like, I don't know.
Like an alliance.
Yeah, just kind of like an alliance, we call it like art alliance. But at that first meeting, you could kind of really determine like a good branding, and kind of can think of some ideas and brainstorm on that stuff, so you can have really big stuff, brand meetings, and like email, Facebook page, and then you'll have all these members kind of invite everyone, and we'll kind of like start growing from that initial kind of need. I think that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Do you want to put also the idea of a message for what people should bring besides? I mean, the potluck idea is about ideas. So should there be a message so that we don't just show up and eat and leave?
It does need a format of some sort.
And I mean, the subscriber base is super important.
Yeah,
I mean, MoveOn.org and so on and so forth. I mean, they're very valuable in Silicon Valley. We'll monetize it for you. But should we send out a message? Not what do you want, or I mean, our lasting solutions, but what can you do?
Yeah, I think that the potluck does. I mean, that needs a format of some sort.
Well, I would just interject, kind of where some of the things that we had talked about this week, and kind of conceptually, is that I know that there's kind of desires to do these things, but one of the reasons why these efforts don't work or haven't been as effective as they can be in Dallas, right, is that there's like also underlying problems that you have to kind of address first, and a lot of times you put the cart before the horse. So I think initially with the potlucks, even like in language, like we aren't starting anything, we're continuing, an ongoing conversation that lots of people put work in over decades, right? So I think it's important to say that. And then also, in terms of linking with other movements, because as we talked about in some previous sessions, trust is a huge issue in our city, in our civic culture. When it comes to transparency, when it comes to, kind of a splintered art scene. And so for me initially, the purpose of the potluck is to build trust between other people in the arts community in Dallas that don't necessarily have a lot of trust with each other. And I think, it's a very simple act, but being able to bring something good to a potluck is kind of an act, because we've all had potlucks where people just kind of roll through, bring some chips, and you're just like, we've been that person too, I'm sure.
So that's a huge issue, is trust, building this trust again. It's great. I think it's really, really, really important. But then piggybacking on that, what you're saying, Kate, of going to different areas and changing it out, and that also makes it mutual in the sense that everyone is traveling. Everyone is traveling equally. We're not just in Oak Cliff, we're not just in Isabel, we're not just downtown. Like, there is an equal investment on every level, that really does help in building that trust. And that's a really important place to start, I think. And that's kind of what, I think that this has been a really great incubator for starting these ideas, but I think one thing that's really lacking is that right now it's in a CentralTrak home, and we haven't gone out. And I think that going out and moving it onto someone else's turf is going to be amazing, and it'll build that trust and start these conversations and continue these movements and activism in a way that'll be really important.
And what do you think? I was just going to say, can you charge a membership fee and different levels of membership, and maybe have special events that members can attend? You know?
At CentralTrak?
Yeah,
there's all kinds of restrictions. I think they tried to do that at one point, but there's all kinds of bureaucracy issues in there that made it really difficult. I'm not really sure. Yeah, but then the space is free, so you can come in and see exhibitions at any time when there is one. You know, so kind of is that incentive is really weird. Yeah.
You could donate.
You could absolutely donate.
I want to say about changing it up, going to different locations. I do think putting it in other institutions just occasionally is good because it's that it gives us a little bit of context. So people are like, oh, what's that group doing? Oh, that group meets every month, and you know they're interchanged, and then people hear about it and want to contribute or join. Or somebody writes an article on it, and I definitely think the education department at DMA would agree to us doing it, and I can offer the contacts. And I think the National would do it. I'm sure the Fort Worth Warden would do it. And like take advantage of those late nights where really diverse groups of people go through, and those institutions are at least once a month advocating community. And this is partly what we're about. It's kind of nothing to do with it, but it relates with the idea. I watched this film last week. It's a film called Born in Flames, which is an amazing film. You should go and see it. It's a sci-fi documentary style film, mainly feminist film about women, especially women of colour, and women who are lesbian having rights. And it's an amazing film that's been overlooked. But anyway, the police are kind of looking into them in the film. The CIA are trying to shut them down because they're subversive. And they notice that the leader of the group, they can never find out who the leader of the group is because it's always on rotation. And there's also more than one group, and they keep electing their leaders like once a month. There's a new leader, and then all of them elect a leader anyway.
Yeah.
We're not subversive, we don't need to be undercover, but as far as like people having really busy lives, there's no reason why we can't say every month or every 2 months a different person kind of takes, if we need it, and maybe we don't, but like someone who's like, okay, I'll organise this for the next 2 months, and then we put it over. So everybody in the group knows at some point they're going to have to pull their weight, but they also don't have to pull maximum weight all the time. I don't know.
No,
It's
a fabulous idea. I mean, this gets back to my studies. I mean, the indigenous of Mexico, you go back to their idea of good governance. It is a pure democracy. In the capacity that they have a board, the whole community meets, they hash things out until everybody agrees on it. They go with it, or they don't. And when they go with it, everybody has to go with it. And they rotate the board, though. They rotate the board.
But as far as like, you know, it doesn't have to just be Mallory and Daryl organizing, because, you know, if it's going to be a really equitable thing, you can have these potlucks regularly. And yeah, it makes equal ownership, it makes equal trust, it makes equal value. Everyone's pulling the same amount of weight, and you're also traveling to different places, to really show that the support system is there. It's great.
Yeah, keeping it on a rotary system really kind of will prevent passive membership. Which is showing up for the crowd.
Right.
It'll keep everyone kind of invested and focused on paying attention to what the group's goals and what everyone's kind of working at.
Yeah.
As well as ideally, like having it at different locations. As your membership continues to grow, it'll open more options for different places to host these events. Say you get a member, like a gallerist, to be there, and they're like, you know, I'll ask the owner and see if we can have a gallery. That means you also get to see the art at the same time. Just kind of
and basically it's publicity in a way. It's not just by being in all these different places through kind of osmosis and subconscious, we will all be making connections. We will all be seen in spaces that we're usually maybe not part of. And those people might reach out and find out about an artist or a creator or a community member in the group, and other interactions will be forged through that, just by the fact that we're being seen. And and we're being active, rather than hide, like, not that we're choosing to hide, but when we do it in someone's house, it's like we're just converted and we're not opening our doors to more interaction with the outside.
It's like an art mafia. It's true.
So we've been going for about an hour and a half, a little bit more, a little bit less actually. So, but I think that this is a really great place to end because we have something that's going to happen following. This is our last session, but it's leading into these potlucks, which is going to be really, really productive and great. And I think I'm going to be, there for that one, but I'm going to talk to you guys. But yeah, so I feel comfortable ending on this note. Are there any more last thoughts or comments or suggestions or solutions that we can write on the wall?
I would just say, there's a sign-up book.
Yeah, I put
Just make sure that everybody knows.
Oh, I put one right next to the water that says, yeah, I can sign in there because I can make a specific group for this.
You have to sign in blood though.
Okay, well, I'm ready. Blood. Any last minute thoughts?
I just think you have to start having these potlucks. You have to keep in mind or know why we're having it the whole time.
Yeah, I agree.
Or it's just gonna go away.
Yeah, I think for this first one.
An agenda.
Yeah, it's a little bit of.
Not an agenda, but just why are you doing this?
I don't think it is.
Like what's the reason why? I mean, if you're talking about, engaging the people who could buy art and, bring them down to buy local art and, crossing that bridge, how is this potluck doing that?
I think the semantics of agenda is too formal. Valerie,
Yeah.
For me, it's a party first.
Yeah.
And then it's the community second. And then it's the active, you find the people that are interested. And it's kind of like what you were saying with you find whatever you personally are invested in and can connect to and make. I mean, so I think it's all a personal thing, when you go to these things, you have your own personal mission, and agendas, and you can make that happen there.
Then you have ideas, and that ideally would be a group where
But yes, I think it should be maybe on the that this is a place to do that.
I think it's as simple as an introduction. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We're here for this reason. We're here to continue this conversation. And it can be informal. It doesn't necessarily need to be a formalized thing, but it sets up the context for conversation.
Well, I was just going to say that, if you just see, this sort of platform for, so cheesy, but just change, wanting something to change, and then it could go from there. But it's almost just okay, we all acknowledge, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
And that's it for the first thing, right? We're all in agreement upon that. Yeah. And I think that could get a good start.
Then,
So I guess
I was going to say, for future stuff, whether or not you want at the end goal of having collectors or something attending and stuff like that, that should probably come later after a sustainable community has already kind of begun. These first 2 meetings will probably be very, get people to kind of come.
No way, I don't think it's a meeting. I think everybody's
Yeah, I
invited.
think it's bring your parties. It's too formal to think of it in those terms because again, people that are burnt out aren't going to want to necessarily come to something that's a meeting with an agenda.
Yeah.
So it needs to be something that it's fun. Let's have mimosas. Let's go to Fair Park and do a tour.
Yeah.
Let's drink mimosas when we go to Fair Park and do a tour. Things like that go a really long way. That aren't so formal. That really bring in
Pizza parties.
Yeah, anything that's really community building is really important.
Sleepovers.
Yeah, I think it's I think part of what everybody's saying makes sense. At first we want to stop feeling isolated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think everybody feels isolated, but a lot of us might, in the kind of work we're doing or the kind of life we've chosen, which is maybe less financially stable than a stockbroker or something. And so first it's feeling like there's a group, getting to know each other, because right now we still don't really know each other that well, or I don't know everybody that well. And then saying that these events that are both party and meeting are just a chance for sharing ideas, context, and maybe at some point down the line after a couple of sessions, we might all decide that, we want at the beginning of these to have 30 minutes where we sit down in a circle and talk ideas, and then we break, drink, and keep chatting, but in a less formal. There's no reason why we can't have a bit of both. Yeah, totally. We can break it up, because maybe if it's all party, people after a while will stop coming because they're like, oh, that's fun, but nothing's actually changing. But if it's all meeting, people will be like, oh, it's all talk and no do. Yeah, it's somewhere in a bit of everything.
I think just the the words I just heard are change in community building. Even if we just use those words in association with the party, that is why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Let people work with that.
Yeah.
Changing community. What does that make you want to do?
One of the things that comes to my mind is just like, you know, if this is Dallas, then also be mindful of the locales where we're meeting. I mean, I know we're saying that, so just to be mindful of that, because some people won't even go to the National, they don't feel comfortable to do that, so we need to be thinking about a variety of venues.
Absolutely. I think a variety of things is really important. Because there are also people that are uncomfortable going to West Dallas, or like it would take me a really long time to get to Oakland because I don't have a car. But you know, if we also like if I knew that there was a meeting that was going to be in Deep Ellum a few weeks later, and people coming from Oak Cliff were coming to Deep Ellum, then it would make sense for me. Like I would be equally invested, you know. Great session. Any last minutes? Great guys, thank you so much.